100 of us, and we all spent the weekend on a freaking aircraft carrier up in Northern California. It was a history teacher ed camp, and we owned that ship for the entire weekend. And so we're doing all of our learning sessions underneath the planes and in the staterooms of a real aircraft carrier. It was honestly some of the best professional development I've ever had. It totally rejuvenated me as a history teacher. And so, John, introduce yourself in your wonderful book series.
Wow, everything's a letdown after that. But we actually had to emphasize what you're saying, Scott. It was great because we had sessions in ready rooms where real pilots flew from World War II aircraft carrier. It was amazing. And I think that's an exemplar of, what historical empathy looks like. It was really neat to have the teachers there because having teachers in that setting, they understood the significance. We were on the USS Hornet, and it was a nearly religious experience for some people. I mean, they were really, really just dripping in all of that history. So my name is John. If you look there, I'm a self-contaminated teacher. I teach a self-contained sixth grade classroom. I've been an assistant superintendent. I've started a public high school from scratch, Minarets High School. I've been a tech director, and I've got about 25 years in education. And one of my hallmarks is free lifetime tech support. So make sure I'll put my email in here. And if I say anything that you're interested in, but I go too fast or you need more support, email me. I'll help you out.
Nice. And so we are going to introduce you to the wonderful world of EduProtocols today. John and Adam are both middle school teachers. I am a high school teacher. And EduProtocols are real simply just digital lesson frames where every day the content changes, but the lesson itself, the structure of the lesson stays the same. And we're going to show you some examples of student work about how we get our students to improve their critical thinking, actually inject some more collaboration. And what I was talking about before the session started is how do you get kids who won't unmute in Zoom to actually communicate? And so we're going to take you through 3 of them today: Cyber Sandwich, Number Mania, and Iron Chef. There are, I believe, 16 in the first book and 12 in the second book.
And thanks to Adam, an unlimited number of permutations on the interwebs.
That's right. So I'm gonna skip over this. This is just boring research. I'm going to talk to you about the first EduProtocol that I use called Cyber Sandwich, which I've used a number of different ways, and it's set up for a twosome, but I have used it as a threesome and even as a foursome with students. And don't think I'm pervy. I'm a golf coach in my other job here at Kennedy High School.
Well, let me distract our stunned listeners right now by saying I'm going to upgrade you, Scott. I've had kids choose to work in groups of 3, which strikes me as cool but weird. But they literally say, can the 3 of us work together? And I say, yeah, we just add a slide and we just work right on. But it's truly collaborative, which is the great part.
Yep. And the Cyber Sandwich protocol, which you can see everything that is linked in these slides, everything that's underlined has a link to it, and you can click on it. I don't think we talked about the eduprotocols.com website, where a lot of these lesson frames are open for you to use and adapt. I love Cyber Sandwich because you can either have students read the same article or have them read different articles, and then they have to talk when they do a Venn diagram about what they actually learned and what they actually wrote down from what they read. So it's a simple 10-minute structure. And John, why don't you take it away? These are some examples from your classroom.
Yeah. So when I was in my teaching credential program, they talked about think, pair, share. And the problem with think, pair, share is you do the popsicle stick thing. It's dehumanizing. Let's just cut to the chase. And scaring kids into listening is not a fun thing either, right? I'm going to publicly humiliate some of you at random. That's not a good way to get kids thinking in their bigger brain. So this is a real example I did with some 6th graders. I try to, when I see things that jump in my news feed that I think my 6th graders might bite on, I try to throw those in. So this is real student work. There was an article that I found where they found a young teenager based on the footprints who was carrying a child in New Mexico, How many people knew that there were people walking around in New Mexico 10,000 years ago? So the age group was kind of cool. And if you want to beep to the next slide, this is the actual cyber sandwich. So see that part up there where it says this article, that's the part Scott was talking about. So I gave them the article to read and they read it independently and they took some notes. And so here's one student's notes and then click. Here's the other student's notes. Now, Scott, if you click back and forth, not too quick because we don't want any epilepsy issues, you can see that the kids had differences. This kid had this kid had this. One was more copy pasty, but they're not exactly the same. So I gave the kids, using Scott's metric, about 10 minutes to read and take notes. I try to pick articles that feel like they're about one page, whatever that looks like. And then when I'm patrolling around the room and I go, okay, student one, put your notes, student put your notes on student two, and then things that they found go in the middle. And they thought, hey, that mammoth and sloth thing, that was a big deal, right? So now I put my Gandalf hat on. I have each of the groups, each of the pairs or trifectas or quartets, to use safer language than Scott did, because we don't want to say three-way in sixth grade. So we let them, each group is now accountable. And this is the brain piece. They know at the beginning of the assignment, each group is going to be accountable. And Adam, I would love this, love to hear your thoughts on this just quickly. I have scaffolded this as Bazinga. What's the biggest idea? What's something that when you read this, you went, oh my God, I had no idea. And then I pick articles that have some Bazinga. The second one is Wall of Facts, which is, I'm a little shy and I'm just going to give you 5 facts. And then the third option is, what's something that blew your mind? So what is something as you read this that made you go, oh, is that real? Or how did that work? So we have that little whip around. And what do you think of those for scaffolds, Adam? Does that work?
Oh, totally. I have found when you can keep middle schoolers kind of in that, like, give them, hey, find 5 things, or find like the one thing that wowed you the most. Middle schoolers are all over that. And it's such a big help to them, especially at 7th and 8th grade level. So.
Actually, you made me just think of this. If I was Scott, I would say make a TikTok of your Bazinga. So going on to the next slide, this is the wrap up. The thing I don't like about Think, Pair, Share is it ends like this a lot. Mr. Petri, what is your answer? And he says, Adam took mine. And then the whole game ends. And it ends with a bad taste in everybody's mouth. So in this model, I give the kids about 10 minutes and they construct a third person paragraph about what they just learned. Boom. You do 5 of these in a row, you got a pretty nice little essay going. And it's only half an hour a day. So it's really slick that way. So that's the cyber sandwich. And Scott, you can take the helm back.
I love it. So I'm just going to briefly rush through a cyber sandwich I did on the Russian Revolution and Bloody Sunday. 2 formidable reads. You can click on them here. Ella had one read and Julian had a different read. And then they have to talk about same things. What are the things that Emma noticed? What are the things that Julian noticed? And then what are the things that both articles had in common? And what I like about this is when it comes to grading, I just go through in my little Schoology feed and I can see who did what. Did they do, if they did all 3 components, that's an easy A. If they did 2 of the components, that's a B. And if they only did 1 component, that's a C. And that's how I grade classwork in our online setting. It's, we at my school, we have only see the kids twice a week in there for 70-minute sessions. And what I like is I can do these EduProtocols. I can do 2, sometimes 3 of them in one class session. And then I have real student work to show others after it's over.
And I want to jump in there, Scott. Some people might say, Scott, you're prepping 3 lessons per period. What's your prep time for this?
About 5, maybe 10 minutes. I just have to make copy and give each person a blank slide.
You basically update the link is the gist of it. Change the link. And what for the kids, if you have kids that aren't working, one of the reasons they're not working is because they're not sure what to do. And there's a lot of people that would rather do nothing than be stupid by their actions.
And ask a question. Yes. Yep. God forbid they unmute and ask a question or put anything in the chat. And speaking about putting things in the chat, Adam, can I get you to put your Twitter handle in there so people can follow you and see the great stuff your kids are doing?
Yep.
So
Glad
we're now at our second EduProtocol, and this is called Number Mania. It's simply an infographic, and our friend Ryan O'Donnell gave us this template, which I have repurposed over and over and over again in my 10th grade.
The numbers.
Yep, and in my 10th grade world history or my 11th grade US history class. And earlier this summer, I did this as a training for other teachers, and I wanted them to experience how you do this. So what I do is I give them a template, and they click on the link, they get their own template, they make a copy, they save it as their name. Then I give them a reading, and this comes from Dave Gutierrez's blog post. It's about a Mexican American who died at Iwo Jima and how he was remembered. And what I ask the teachers or students to do is to retell Hilario Garcia's story using numbers and icons from these places. And I'm failing at Zoom 101. And then afterwards, I have a sort of teacher's guide that I say, oh, here are the numbers you should have included in your document. How well did you do? There's a student assessment piece. And I love using peer review and student assessment on these because, as John said, if you're doing 3 lessons a day, didn't you just triple the amount you're grading? No. I have other people do it. I have them peer assess, and that lifts the grading burden off of me. And it actually turns me into the friendly coach instead of the mean teacher that doesn't like their work and always gives them a poor grade. So John, tell us about the first 100 days.
Well, I want to talk just a smidge more about Number Mania first. So basically the build flow is really simple. You make a Google form. It has 3 questions: your name, your number, your fact. The kids all attack a singular subject. And to me, the brilliance of this, Marlena Hebern, my co-author, created this one. The brilliance is, why are we waiting 2 weeks for kids to gather their 30 facts for their report? We can gather those facts in 5 minutes. And on a Google form or a Microsoft form, they dump into a spreadsheet. And then to Scott's point, they troll through this spreadsheet and they grab some facts that are relevant, which is just like going to Starbucks, right? Some people are no lactose and some people are like, I'll take extra cream. And so you go through, the kids grab some facts, and then they build an infographic. And then I think this is the last piece that you left out, Scott, which is, you guys, we can do these kinds of activities for an opening. This is not a culminating. This is replacing the opening. And Scott, some of the stuff your kids have done with like Okinawa and Battle of Britain and things like that, they're going deep visually and diverse and creatively and on their own right off the get-go. So now you can click over to mine. This is by a friend of mine named Dana McJunkin-Smith, and she wanted to cover the first 100 days of Roosevelt. How many 7th graders do you think are going to be into this? Not many. So click again. And so this is how simple it is for her class. Read this article, share your fact, that leads to a Google form. And then I love the way she did this grab and go, right? So there's a spreadsheet there. The link may not work because I reshared it. Yeah, so that's okay, Scott. Okay. So, but it's the same workflow. And then click down. Here's what some 7th graders made in one class period, knowing nothing about the first 100 days. She's got some variations here with Roosevelt and with Kennedy, but look how nice that is. The kids are building it. The kids are building it. Keep going, Scott. There's other good ones in there. And so this is getting done in like 30 minutes. What's my grading time, Scott?
About 5-10 minutes.
Maybe. What grade would you give this kid, Adam? Go right there. For an opening activity, first 100 days of Roosevelt.
That's an A+ right there.
Good enough. Now, what the kids don't realize is it might only be 5 points. This is not a 100-point A. Right. But in 15 minutes, if you produce this, I'm going to give you 5 points. And that's that flow that the kids really start building on. And no 2 slides are alike. And Scott, this is the one I was just alluding to. Go to the next slide. This is Battle of Stalingrad and the French Revolution one. I love these.
Yep. And I would say these give kids a little street cred. I see my kids tweeting them out. I see them on their Instagram stories. All of a sudden, this is work that's kind of cool and that they're proud of, that the other boring history teachers just frankly aren't doing. So I have seen a few kids that are kind of reticent to mix their social media world with the world of school. But I see a lot of kids that just put this stuff out there and they're proud of it, which I think is what the academic researchers would call social capital, and leads to a lot of buy-in. Do you want to talk about jigsawing and John Hattie?
Well, I'm going to throw in some Marzano too. I went to a training in about 2005. It was 4 days of training on Marzano. And the epiphany that I had driving home after the fourth day was, oh my God, I don't actually do any of these. Like, because we read chapter 4 and do the questions, right? Or I make up some fun, wacky activity because I'm pretty good at fun, wacky activities, but I'm not doing any of this. And so that's where this idea of the Marzano Hattie piece, and I think you guys will agree, a cyber sandwich has 6 or 7 Marzanos. Right. You've got collaboration or advanced organizers, feedback, there's a bunch going on. And this is your slide, Scott, but when you take the fact that jigsaw teaching, collaborative teaching is number 7 on Hattie, but then you're also doing cognitive task analysis and collective efficacy, and you're using 5 Hatties at a time. Even Hattie hasn't researched what it looks like when you're doing 3 or 4 Hatties at a time. And that's the magic of it, because I've seen many districts where they say, let's do Wednesday Marzano number 2. So they're only doing 1 Marzano at a time. You're talking about taking 5 or 6 of those practices and welding them together into an entirely new thing. And that's why I love the way you say trifecta on that slide, Scott, because some days of the week is Cyber Sandwich. Some days of the week is Numbers Mania. Some days of the week is Iron Chef. And you're spinning those all into this whole new thing.
And what it really does is it brings teacher clarity to the focus in your practice, where you don't have to give the directions for Number Mania.
You just say Number Mania, go.
Yeah.
And they go, what are we doing it on? And I'm like, we're doing it on what I say, go. So the beauty of that, though, is the kids' cognitive load. And I think both of you have seen this same effect in your classroom. They start talking about content first. They are not talking about how do I get through the worksheet. And that is a beautiful thing.
So a little bit on setting up the deep. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to jump in. I've done a Cyber Sandwich and a Number Mania being observed by my principal, or he even had another principal from the high school come in and observe, and they were blown away because we are a Marzano district, and they were like, whoa. These kids are talking about
but they think of Marzano 1 at a time, and you're like, no. That would be like saying we're going to go out to eat tonight, but we're just going to have macaroni and cheese, which is a nice dinner. But when you start with a salad and you end with a ribeye and then you have some creme brulee, that's a meal. And I don't think people have ever seen it that way.
Yeah.
So this slide here is just a way I've graded things in the past, especially when I ask students to do an annotated bib and a infographic at the same time. I just add up how many distinct facts or statistics did you put on your infographic, and then how many different sources did you use. And I'm building kids up for AP research and AP seminar so that they're used to using the internet to really look at what are peer-reviewed published articles. And then I just want to briefly talk about the debrief. This is all I do is I go through the article and I cut and paste every time I see a number. And then I say, look, all these numbers might be in your infographic. And this is a total of 38 numbers. How many did you slap on your story? The original article was 1,650 words. It's summarized here to 341 words. Do you still get the whole story? Does your infographic tell the whole story? Or did you kind of run out of things to say halfway through the article? Mm-hmm. And so I'll give this to kids and I'll let them reflect on how good of a job they did. And they are so much more brutal than I would ever be to themselves.
Yeah.
So, all right. I know we're racing through time. We got 5 minutes left and then questions. I want to talk quickly about Iron Chef. And Iron Chef is sort of another jigsawing technique. I was complaining that my students didn't know how to contextualize information. They didn't know the historical eras. And my friend Bob Bain said, "Do you teach them the historical eras?" And I said, "Oh, no, I don't. Maybe that's part of the problem." And so the first
Could be
week,
you.
the first week of school, I just decided I was going to give them all of the historical eras, and I gave them the date, and they went through and they did research on every historical era in world history. And what I like about Iron Chef is this becomes a crowdsourced study guide where I can say, let's go back to this Iron Chef and look at what we know about nationalism and fascism. When did it happen? And this teaches kids to value the work that they do in your class because you keep going back to it. And it also is a good starter for, okay, we're going to do Iron Chef for the first time. And you have to teach them who's got which slide and who's got which historical era. And I use spreadsheets for that. And it just makes it super easy for me.
And I'd like to point out just very briefly that it works wonderfully in distance learning. And it works just as wonderfully face-to-face. So you're not giving anything up if you start practicing now. You can do this in Nearpod or Pear Deck or Google Slides. There's dozens of ways to do it. And the kids get faster and faster and their slides get better and better.
Yep. And I do a lot of reading in my class, especially a lot of historical nonfiction in my high school 11th grade class. And what I find that is a barrier to kids actually reading effectively is every historical nonfiction author throws 200 people at you in the first 100 pages of the book. And the kids are overwhelmed and they don't know who's who. And is this
I love what you did on this. Is my favorite. This is my favorite variation. I can't wait for people to see this one.
So, you know, what I've done is I'll make a list of the names. And here are the historical figures that get mentioned in this book. And then I'll put it next to my student roster. So now Michael knows that he's got to research James Baldwin, and Nancy knows that she's got to research Medgar Evers. And I give them, gosh, I want to say in this book by Eddie Glaude, 98 people. In the first 100 pages. It's just too much for high school kids. And so then they find their slide and they do the research for you. And you don't have to, you know, worry about, do you know who James Baldwin is? Do you know who Medgar Evers is? They have given you a cheat sheet before you even start reading the book. Now, when they jump into the book, they feel a little bit more secure.
And design wise, when we started doing this, what I really, has anybody seen President baseball cards? Because there are those, but I saw those one time a long time ago. And I thought really what we're doing is just making character baseball cards, if that's a good analog. Yep. And what are the salient facts? Birth date, job title, you know, major impacts on history. So each kid's basically building a baseball card, and we're building a baseball team, one character at a time. And I love this, Scott, because again, what's your work time? Once you make the key slide and duplicate it 40 times, go get them. And then you just watch the kids work. In the old days, this would have been a series of you making PowerPoints and then saying things that sound like this. You guys, I need you to take notes. Why aren't you listening? This is so important. These are people are important. And when you switch to the kids making the character slides, they start advocating for their characters and they start telling you, no, my character is more important than that other one. And there's this little brain shift that's incredible.
Amen. So this is one that you can just look at. It's an example of my students, you know, at the beginning of the day, they knew Rosie the Riveter. By the end of the day, they had 48 different women with important roles in World War II. John, take it away.
So this is what I do with, this is a mega Iron Chef. And so we do this in Google Slides. And now this isn't history per se, but I think it's a good example. So I give the kids a blank slide and they put their team name. It's a long story. They want to be called the Chicken Strippers. In this case, they needed to learn 5 parts for us to do our science project. Who wants to lecture robot parts to 6th graders? I do not. So basically what I did was I made a series of slides. There were 5 slides in one of these, 5 slides in one of these, 5 slides in one of these. And so the kids could join the teams and then choose, like what you're doing, Scott. They got to choose their own slides. So this was kids typing this in. Next slide. So here come the parts. It's a 011 servo. There's a picture of it, what it does in your own words and why you need it. Next slide. And here's the rover build plate, what it does, why I need it, and what it costs. Next slide. These are 6th graders building this in about 10 minutes. This is the i5 dimmer. And so that kid found a picture of the little robot finger. Oh, and by the way, we do the secret ingredient. And so in this case, their secret ingredient was a cool picture of the Perseverance rover, which is super timely. Next slide. And then this kid got 2 parts. They got the W1 wire and the P3 power bit. So this is kids teaching kids. Now, I put more slides in, but we're going to blast right through them, Scott. So here's the next. Oh, no, maybe I took them out.
Okay.
So imagine that another group of 5 does this, and another group of 5 does this, and another group of 5 does this. Each group has only 2 minutes to present and 10 minutes to build. So in about 15 to 20 minutes, they have seen 4 examples of the W1 and the P3, the O11. You just transfer this over to most popular German fighter of the Battle of Britain, most popular British fighter of the Battle of Britain, bomber, British radar versus German radar. You can just break that on down and the kids analyze it. And then this is that trifecta slide that freaks me out with happiness.
Yes, the more you do, the more your kids are naturally unmuting and talking about what was on their slide. What I love about these is, especially during distance learning, I show the slide deck just like this, and the kids unmute and talk when it's their slide. And for someone who's used to teaching into the void, and I hate it, this actually brings some life back into my distance learning classroom. So,
and then one other quick thing. As a former film teacher, don't give kids too much time to talk. 5 minutes is too much. Okay. So for my groups, they get 2 minutes for the whole group. It's plenty. And then if I have 5 groups, we're through in 10 minutes. So here's how to find me.
And did you give your free lifetime tech support speech?
Well, I think I teased it earlier, and I think you guys do the same thing. But if you like some of this and you want to try it, free lifetime tech support, and I'll put my email in the chat again, just in case you want to send me an email right now. But as you start on this journey, I'm here to help. So you can send me slides or you can request slides. I'll build things for a start. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Like Scott mentioned at the beginning, there's about 28 of the official protocols, and then just literally limitless iterations of them. They work great in distance learning. They work great in face-to-face, and they work great in hybrid.
And if you visit the website, EduProtocols.com, you can take the templates. I think most of them are up there, not all of them, but a lot of them. And I'm always interested. You can track me down on Twitter at Scott M. Petri. And I love resharing, unique and innovative examples of using these protocols. I think it really simplifies teaching and allows kids to use their creativity. And I think that's it. I'll stop sharing.